And so they were like right on my ass. And I seen a state trooper go down the road, and I seen him turn around. Oh, sure enough, they blew like Dave and them. And I take my girl back to her house because she's drinking anyway. I come back, and Dave sees me pull in. He tells the officer, he goes, "Could you please make him leave? Because I know he's going to say something to make me have to go to jail." And then the biggest memory is, he got me an Easy Money a tryout for ECW. The way it worked, we went and did our tryout. Tommy Dreamer's sitting there with a piece of paper. He comes out. We've did our tryout, and we got dressed. Tommy Dreamer goes, "First match is Kid Cash and Chili Willie against Cash's two boys." Well, it went right over my head. I went, "We're Cash's boys." I said, "Cash, we're your boys, right?" And he goes, "Yeah." I went, "We're working tonight?" He goes, "Yeah." And I went, "No way." So anyway, Tommy goes, "First match, 6 minutes, Cash and Chili over." Well, Cash and Chili could have went in there and jobbed us out, and nobody would have cared and knew about it, or it would have made a difference in the world. When we called a match, I asked Dave, I said, "Hey, during the heat, do you care if I get on Jason's shoulders while he sits on top turnbuckle and jump off with a leg drop?" And Cash looked at me and Jason. He goes, "Look," he said, "let me tell y'all something." He said, "Me and Chili, we have contracts here." He said, "Y'all go out and get your shit over and get you contracts." And I just thought that was awesome. Because like I said, they could have went in and jobbed us out, made themselves look good, and nobody would ever, cared. But he was trying to get us a job, and I was like, wow, mad respect for that.
When you went and were talent enhancement for the WWE, were you more nervous then, or were you more nervous the first time you hit the ring? At what point in your career did you realize that you had made it to the next level, and how did it occur to you? When did it occur to you?
I would say ECW, dude. I mean, that was the big three right there. You know what I'm saying? And I was there, and we were there probably, I don't know, maybe a month, and Tommy Dreamer comes up and he goes, "I can't afford to fly you in, and you're not going to make big money, but consider yourself a permanent part of ECW," which meant we had a spot on every show. Because, I mean, before you got a spot, the way it worked was you drove to the show, you got dressed, you worked out in the ring, you stayed dressed, and then if somebody picked to wrestle you, then you got to work. If not, you just made a trip for nothing because you didn't get a payday.
So many
but
times.
That never happened to us. The whole time that we went, we worked, and then like a month later, Tommy comes up and told us that we was full-time employee of ECW.
You were there through the rise and the fall of ECW?
Not really the rise. I mean, I was there a little less than a year before Vince bought it and killed it.
And did you see the writing on the wall?
No. I mean, hell, you leave a show and you think, okay, there's going to be a show next week, I mean, honestly, I wasn't making jack anyway, so the money thing didn't bother me. I told Tommy Dreamer one time, I said, I will do this for free just for the exposure that I'm getting. The money will come later. This is fun. I'm in ECW, I don't need to get paid. Matter of fact, I mean, the last 2 shows that they did, I didn't go because I actually had a indie booking. Because me, I'm thinking, there'll be a show next week. I'll just go to it. And then I read that they got in the ring and did saying bye to the fans and shit, and ECW was done. I went, damn.
So outside of damn, what else went through your mind during that time?
Oh, back to the Indies. And I'll be honest with you, that's when wrestling stopped being fun. I've always said that when you first start wrestling, nobody will pay you because nobody knows who you are. But when you've been in it long enough to build a name for yourself, it's no fun when you're making money. It's a job.
You have been in the ring with some pretty big names. Names from the past, names currently. What is some of the best advice that you've been given? Because, like, as most workers, you are always looking for advice from people who have done it before you. What's some of the best advice you've been given?
Well, Ricky Morton used to teach me and Kid Cash till he's blue in the face because we'd go out and do all the stupid shit, and it wouldn't mean nothing, and Ricky would be like, save that for when it means something. You don't want to do that, every night, blah, blah, blah. And, me and Cash, we were typical indie workers that go in one ear and out the other, and, we'd be like, he's just mad because he can't do it. Him. But then when you learn how to work, then it all sinks in. You'd be like, hey, that Morton guy, he might know what he's talking about. Pretty much that's it. I'll go to shows now. Even been in business 30 years, I'll go to a show, and if there's a name on the show that I respect, that I like, I'll ask them to watch my match. And you can't get any guys that ain't never done anything in this business to ask anybody to watch your match. And then if you do and you criticize it, well, you don't know what you're talking about anyway. Yep, you're right. That's why I make car payments and you make gas money, bitch.
Everybody knows that you and the Rib go hand in hand. While we're talking about Ricky Morton, have you ever ribbed him?
Very first time I wrestled on a show with him, I wrestled him, and he's already dressed and out the gimmick table. I walked by his bag, and I see a pair of blue tights with white fringe. I went, all right, this would be good. So I put them on, and I had sweatpants up over them so he couldn't tell I was wearing them. We get in the ring, go lock up, and he goes, I got a pair of tights. You son of a bitch, them are my tights. I went, yeah, they are. And he would come in the corner, and I'd wrap my fingers around the fringe. I went, come in closer, I'll tear them. I'll rip his fringe right off. And then after the match, he gave me the tights anyway. So I have 4 pair of Ricky Morton's tights.
How much memorabilia do you have?
Let me tell you what I have. I have 4 or 5 pair of Ricky's tights. I have a pair of camouflage and New Jack pants that he gave me. I have a skirt that Francine wore on an indie show I was at. And I have an outfit that Christy Miss wore the night that she valeted me. That's pretty much it.
And what about any of your pictures from Ric Flair? Do you still have those?
Yeah, I sell those all the time. Matter of fact, and I wouldn't try and disrespect Rick, because I went up to a show and asked him. I said, hey, I have pictures. Would you, is it cool if I sell them? He goes, yeah, make your money. I said, thank you, sir. Because I knew exactly when he stood beside me in the picture, I went, yeah, these son of bitches getting 8x10s and sold. It ain't like I was doing it behind his back. I had his permission, so that's what I do.
We are talking with high-flying Chris Hamrick, ECW original Chris Hamrick. Chris, the next topic that I want to talk to you about is your time partnering with Tracy Smothers.
How that all started, I was in XPW. And they were talking about putting me with Johnny Webb, because he was doing he wore the Confederate flag and all that bullshit. And I just told Kevin Kleinrock, I went, hey, what about Tracy Smothers? Do you think he'd be interested? And I knew he would, because I was on a show with Tracy, and he asked me, about SPW or whatever. I went, yeah, man, would you come back? And he goes, well, I would if I talked to Rob or whatever, and things worked out. And so I went to Kevin Kleinrock. I went, look, we get Tracy Smothers. Why don't you team me and him up? And that's how it started.
So there was obviously chemistry there between you and him. What do you think that chemistry was? Just
guys knowing how to work. I would go in, do all the high flying, and Tracy would do the technical wrestling. And no matter where we went, we tried to be heels, but we were total baby faces. We went to England, and me and Steve Corino and Tracy Smothers were old school ex, trying to be like a heel faction or whatever, and they turned us babyface. They wouldn't boo anything that we did. So finally they turned us babyface. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was in PWF for Steve Corino, I was the Universal Champion, which is like their world champion or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Victory was my partner, and Louis Dangerously was my manager. Now, we had a faction called Old School, right?
Mm-hmm.
In it, you had Joey Mercury, Michael Shane, Jack Victory, Louis Dangerously, me, and Alexis Lurie, which is Mickey James. Now, you tell me that ain't a hell of a faction right there.
That is very impressive faction.
Yes, it is. You know, people ask me about belts all the time and blah, blah, blah. The only time that a belt really, 2 times that a belt meant anything to me was PWF belt. I was their Universal Champ, like I said, which is their World Champ. And the only reason that it meant so much to me is because Steve had so much talent there. And for him to pick me to be the leader of the company, that meant a lot to me. I mean, he had Low-Key, he had AJ Styles, he had Samoa Joe, he had Christopher Daniels, he had the SATs, he had Red, he had Michael Shane, Joey Mercury, Matt Stryker was there. I hated going to PWF shows because it's so freaking hard to leave after a show because we had so much fun in the locker room. And then the other title that meant a lot to me was JT Lightning put the strap on me for Cleveland All-Pro Wrestling, and he would just bring in different names for me to work because he knew that I could work with them.
We'll be right back with our featured interview on this week's Carolina Independent Wrestling Report right after this.
PWX Wrestling. Live the experience.
It's time for your PWX Word of the Week. Unstoppable. There's your word. Now go to pwxpro.com, click on ticket at the top of the page, and then enter Unstoppable as the code. There will be 2 winners per week. Head on over to pwxpro.com for your chance to be a part of Rise of a Champion 10. Here's what you don't get if you missed the Ninja Troll Digicast on Spreaker.com.
Let's talk about hour 2, Tim Dixon. Let's. And you know what? I think I'm going to do the chivalrous thing, and whether she likes it or not,
yeah,
we're going to let Tim go first.
Oh.
So that way we get 8 before beauty, right?
It's the Ninja Troll Digicast, Friday nights at 8 p.m. on Spreaker.com. With previous shows available on demand. It's the only podcast with a kick. It's the Ninja Troll Digicast.
This is Bryce Anthony.
And this is Boomer Payne of the Sons of Steel.
It's the one, the only manager of champions, Joey Nuggs. You know me, right?
This is Kendall Slayer, and you're listening to the CIW Report, baby.
All right. So we've talked about ECW. Putting that aside and putting money aside, what would you consider to be your best time in professional wrestling?
Getting a crispy miss. Hey, you want the truth? We're shooting, dog. Because Christy Miss was better than any belt I've ever held, any payday that I've ever got. It was there. That was the one time I enjoyed wrestling.
So how long did the relationship last?
About 14 days.
In doing some research on you, I had to go through YouTube and find different matches of you. The one match that stands out where you did the through the rope spot is your match with Owen Hart. How did you prepare for that?
That's a hell of a move. Owen was awesome. The thing that really stands out about that match is Owen requested me. And I had done the bump with Tatanka, and I did it the next night with the 1-2-3 Kid. And I don't know, we probably went back like 2 months later or whatever. The third night I was there, George Steele was the agent for the WWF, whatever the hell. And I was sitting there, and he comes up to me, he goes, "I've got heat with you." And I went, "Wasn't me." He goes, "No, I've been coming to these matches for 50 years. He said, "I try not to sell." He said, "That bump's done brought me out of my seat twice." He said, "Don't do that bump anymore." And I went, "Okay." So then, like, the night I wrestled Owen met us at the van. He's like, "I'm working you tonight, right?" And I went, "I don't know. I ain't even been inside yet, Owen." He goes, "Yeah, I'm working you." He said, "They told me as soon as I got here that I'm working the kid that goes through the bump through the ropes." He goes, "You're famous for it up here." And I went, "Well, cool. Give me a contract." He goes, "Do you want to do it tonight?" I went, "I don't know. You think I should?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." Boom, we're there. And if you actually watch it on again, you can see Owen turn around and watch me go through the ropes. The very first night that I did the bump with Tatanka, we're getting ready to leave, and Owen calls me over. He goes, "You meant to do that?" And I went, "Yeah, it's just a silly bump I do." He goes, "Unbelievable." He said, "That's the most awesome bump I've ever seen." I went, "Wow, thanks." And he told me, he said, you know, I wish they'd let me work guys like you. He said, they got me working fat, so I want me to jump up for a suplex. And I think that's why the guys really